You've been eating these chips your whole life, so have I. But I finally sat down and read what's actually printed on the back of the bag. And I mean really read it, not the front, not the marketing. The ingredient panel. And what I found tells a completely different story than the smiling packaging ever will. 10 of the biggest snack chip brands in America. One of them can't legally call itself what everyone thinks it is. Another one hides the same flavor-boosting chemical twice, on the same label, under 2 different names, hoping you won't notice. Several of them are sold with cleaner, simpler ingredients in other countries by the exact same company that hands you the chemical-heavy version here. Same brand. Same logo, different formula depending on where you live. Here we're going through all 10, from bad to genuinely concerning. Then I'll show you 4 brands that are actually worth putting in your cart. Let's get into it. Number 10. Lay's Classic. This is the one people think of as the safe choice, the plain one. No wild flavor, no bright dust on your fingers, just potatoes, right? That's what the front wants you to believe. And to be fair, the plain classic bag is genuinely simpler than most of this list. But here's where it gets interesting. The moment you step over to almost any flavored Lay's, the ingredient panel explodes. Sour cream and onion, barbecue, cheddar. Suddenly you're looking at monosodium glutamate, added sugars, and a stack of flavor compounds hiding behind the words natural and artificial flavors. And the oil matters too. The American formula runs on a blend of vegetable oils that can include sunflower, corn, and canola, listed as and/or, which means the exact oil can shift from batch to batch without the label ever changing. You genuinely do not know which oil you're eating on any given day. Now think about portion size. A single ounce sounds reasonable, but nobody eats 1 ounce of Lay's. The whole design of the chip, thin, salted, engineered to dissolve fast, is built so you keep reaching back in. Sodium adds up quietly. A party-size bag can push you toward your entire daily sodium limit in one sitting on the couch. And here's the part most people never connect. Lay's is a Frito-Lay brand. That name is going to come up again and again on this list, because a huge share of what looks like a diverse competitive chip aisle actually traces back to the same parent company using the same playbook. The plain bag is the least of your worries. The problem is everything the brand trains you to reach for next. Number 9. Tostitos Scoops. The tortilla chip that shows up at every gathering next to a bowl of salsa. It feels wholesome. Corn, oil, salt, how bad could it be? And on the original rounds, the list genuinely is short. But 2 things deserve your attention. First, the oil. Tostitos runs on that same interchangeable vegetable oil blend, and the label uses that and/or language that lets the manufacturer swap oils based on cost and supply. Second, and this is the one people miss, is what happens the second you leave the plain version. The hint of lime, the salsa-flavored, the queso-adjacent products layer in maltodextrin, dextrose, and that familiar MSG plus flavor architecture. Maltodextrin is worth pausing on, because it shows up constantly across this entire list. It's a processed starch powder with a glycemic index that can actually be higher than table sugar, and it's used as a cheap filler and carrier for seasoning. It adds nothing you'd recognize as food. It's there to make the powder stick and to bulk out the product cheaply. And because Tostitos positions itself as the grown-up, party-friendly dip-it option, people extend a level of trust to it they'd never extend to a neon orange snack. That trust is exactly the point. The brand looks clean, sits in the clean-seeming part of the aisle, and quietly relies on the same industrial oils and starch fillers as everything else Frito-Lay makes. When a product's entire image is built on looking simple, that's usually the moment to flip the bag over and read slower, not faster. Number 8. Cheetos Crunchy Original. Let's just say the quiet part out loud. That orange powder that stains your fingers is not cheese doing the coloring. It's Yellow 6, a synthetic dye derived from petroleum, printed plainly right there on the label if you bother to look. The full panel reads like a chemistry set. Enriched cornmeal, vegetable oil, whey, cheddar cheese, salt, maltodextrin, natural and artificial flavors, whey protein concentrate, monosodium glutamate, and artificial color Yellow 6. In 2021, California's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment published a peer-reviewed report concluding that synthetic food dye consumption can produce hyperactivity and other neurobehavioral effects in some children. That report highlighted research showing that even very small doses of these dyes affected the most sensitive kids. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how these decisions actually get made in a boardroom. In late 2025, PepsiCo rolled out a line called Simply that strips the artificial dyes out entirely, which proves beyond any argument that they can make this exact product without Yellow 6. The capability exists, they have it. They chose to make that call for one product and left the original synthetic dye formula sitting right next to it on the same shelf. They are not fixing the original, they're offering you a cleaner alternative at a different price point and letting you sort it out for yourself. When a company can remove an ingredient, has already done it, and still chooses to leave it in the version most people actually buy, that's a decision worth remembering the next time you're standing in that aisle deciding what to grab. Number 7. Funyuns Original. The name promises onion rings. The reality is something else entirely. Onion powder, the single ingredient this entire product is named after, appears near the very bottom of the list, below the cornmeal, below the oils, below the salt, the maltodextrin, the MSG. The thing on the front of the bag is an afterthought on the back of the bag. What sits higher on that list is more telling. The same seed oil blends, that maltodextrin filler again, monosodium glutamate paired with yeast extract, and the flavor compounds tucked behind natural and artificial flavors. That yeast extract pairing is the trick worth catching. Yeast extract is itself a concentrated source of free glutamate, the same flavor-amplifying compound as MSG. So you're not getting one hit of glutamate enhancement, you're getting two, delivered under two different names, in a way most shoppers would never spot. And that natural flavors label, that's a regulatory term that lets a manufacturer shelter dozens of distinct compounds behind two harmless-sounding words with zero individual disclosure required. There's genuinely no way for you to know what's actually in there. That's not a loophole they're sneaking through. That's how the rule is written. So you've got a product named after an ingredient it barely contains, propped up by chemical flavor enhancers doing the real work, and a label designed to tell you as little as legally possible. The onion is set dressing. The engineering is the actual product. Number 6. Doritos Cool Ranch. Cool Ranch goes further than most people expect from something they think of as a savory chip. Scan the seasoning and you'll find 3 separate forms of added sugar. Sugar, dextrose, and corn syrup solids. 3 sugars in a snack marketed entirely on being tangy and savory, not sweet. Then layer in the MSG, the sodium inosinate and sodium guanylate flavor enhancer combination, more maltodextrin, and a trio of dyes. And you start to understand what Cool Ranch flavor actually is. It is not a ranch recipe anyone's grandmother would recognize. It's a flavor profile engineered by food scientists using MSG, dehydrated dairy, citric acid, and proprietary compounds hidden inside that natural and artificial flavors designation. There is no Cool Ranch that exists anywhere in nature. The taste you experience is a precisely constructed chemical signal designed to hit your brain's reward system and make it genuinely hard to stop reaching into the bag. That's not an accusation, that's the design brief. That's the product working exactly as intended. 3 forms of sugar in a chip that has no earthly reason to contain any sugar at all, and almost everyone eating it has no idea it's even there. They taste tang and assume tang. Nobody's tasting the corn syrup solids consciously. But it's doing its job on you anyway, nudging the flavor into that addictive zone where one handful becomes half the bag before you've noticed. Number 5. Doritos Nacho Cheese. The ingredient panel on a bag of nacho cheese Doritos runs more than 30 individual ingredients long. For something sold as a simple corn chip with cheese flavoring, that number alone deserves a hard second look. Among those 30+ you'll find all 3 of the synthetic dyes that trigger mandatory warning labels across Europe: Yellow 6, Yellow 5, and Red 40. You'll find 2 forms of added sugar in a savory snack. And you'll find a triple-stacked glutamate system, MSG, working alongside sodium inosinate and sodium guanylate, 2 compounds that research shows can amplify umami perception many times beyond MSG alone. That's an enormous amount of engineering in something you're told is just a snack chip. Now here's the part that's genuinely hard to ignore. Doritos sold in the European Union and the United Kingdom have already been reformulated. The EU version leans on paprika extract, annatto, turmeric, and beet juice for color. No synthetic petroleum-derived dyes at all. Same brand. Same parent company. 2 completely different products depending on which country you're standing in. Food policy advocate Vani Hari has stated in Senate testimony that American food companies are selling reformulated, cleaner versions of these products overseas while continuing to sell the most chemically complex version right here at home. And there's a documented risk that comes with the complexity too. When you're running 30-plus ingredients through shared production equipment at massive scale, cross-contamination with undeclared allergens like soy and wheat becomes a structural risk, not a freak accident. For someone with a severe allergy, that's not a minor labeling hiccup, that's a potential emergency room trip. The cleaner version of this chip already exists. Americans are simply being sold the other one, not because the better version is impossible, but because nobody has required it. Before we get to the final stretch of this list, here's the context that connects everything you've heard so far, and it's the single most important thing to understand about the entire chip aisle. A huge share of the worst products here come from one company, Frito-Lay, a division of PepsiCo. Frito-Lay controls roughly 60% of the entire American salty snack market. Their flagship brands, Lay's, Doritos, Cheetos, Ruffles, Tostitos, Fritos, and Funyuns among them, each generate enormous annual revenue. What that means in practical terms is that most Americans reaching for chips are cycling through the same seed oil blends, the same synthetic dye systems, and the same layered flavor enhancement architecture, no matter which bag they think they're choosing. The aisle looks like a festival of variety, different colors, different shapes, different mascots. But nutritionally and chemically, it's very often close to the same product wearing different costumes. That's the backdrop you need to keep in mind for the next few brands, because the next few aren't even from the aisle you'd expect, and that's exactly why they slip past people. Number 4. Cheez-It Original. Cheez-It technically lives over in the cracker aisle, but let's be honest about how it actually gets used. It functions as a chip snack in most households, it sits beside chips on plenty of shelves, and the ingredients make it absolutely relevant here. Look at the panel and you'll find enriched flour, vegetable oil with TBHQ for freshness, and cheese cultures. That phrase, with TBHQ for freshness, printed right there so casually, is the one that demands attention. TBHQ stands for tertiary butyl hydroquinone. It's a synthetic antioxidant preservative derived from petroleum. The FDA permits it but caps the concentration at a fraction of a percent of a food's total oil content, which tells you something on its own, that it's potent enough to need a legal sealing. Japan has banned TBHQ as a food additive outright. Animal studies have associated it with liver enlargement, vision disturbances, and behavioral changes. The Center for Science in the Public Interest, which has tracked food additive safety for decades, lists TBHQ among the additives it recommends consumers actively avoid. And then there's that made with real cheese claim on the front of the box, technically accurate, but cheese sits well below flour and oil on the actual ingredient list. What you're primarily eating is oil-soaked enriched flour, with cheese playing a supporting role, all of it preserved with a compound a major developed nation won't allow in its food supply. The box looks clean. The front claim is defensible. The preservative inside is one that Japan has decided isn't worth the risk. Those two things don't sit together as comfortably as the packaging wants you to believe. Number 3. Bugles Original. Bugles holds a distinction almost no other major snack in America shares. It is one of the very few that prints freshness preserved by BHT directly on the front of the bag, right out in the open. BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, is restricted in EU infant foods and banned outright in Japan. Animal studies have raised concerns about liver effects, kidney effects, and potential endocrine disruption. The research in humans isn't conclusive, that's a fair thing to say, but the regulatory pattern across other developed nations is worth noticing. When multiple countries independently decide to restrict something, that's a signal. But BHT isn't even the most surprising thing on this label. The third ingredient in original unflavored Bugles, the plain one, is sugar. Not in some dessert variety, the base product. The list reads degermed yellow cornmeal, coconut and/or palm kernel oil, sugar and on down. Sugar sitting at position 3 in what everyone assumes is a plain savory corn snack. Those tropical oils also push the saturated fat up to a meaningful chunk of your daily recommended value per serving, and the sodium sits among the highest in the entire category. So on one small cone-shaped snack you've got a preservative banned in Japan printed on the front, hidden sugar in the third ingredient slot, near the top of the category for both saturated fat and sodium, and a product that from the outside looks like one of the simpler, more innocent options on the shelf. Most people walk right past that BHT disclosure every single time without registering a word of what it actually means. Number 2. Flamin' Hot Cheetos. This is the one where the pattern stops being about labels and starts showing up in doctors' offices. Flamin' Hot Cheetos is among the very small group of major branded chips whose ingredient panels stack multiple artificial colors together, with red 40 and yellow 6 doing the heavy lifting on that signature aggressive red coating. The flavor system piles on another layer entirely. The seasoning brings together MSG, yeast extract, sodium inosinate, and sodium guanylate, multiple separate flavor-enhancing compounds working in concert, engineered to produce an intensity that is genuinely difficult to walk away from mid-bag. The sodium runs high, and a party-size bag can deliver a punishing load in one sitting. But here's the part that moves this out of the realm of label reading and into documented medical territory. Physicians across multiple hospital systems have publicly reported treating children for gastritis directly linked to spicy chip consumption. Doctors in emergency departments have described kids being brought in specifically because of these products, some calling the frequency of it genuinely alarming in their own words. A peer-reviewed case report documented a young patient who arrived at an emergency department with symptoms suggesting internal bleeding, when the actual cause turned out to be red 40 dye from a single bag, mimicking a real medical emergency in appearance. School districts across several states have banned these from school grounds for over a decade now. Multiple physicians, multiple hospital systems, a documented case in the medical literature, school bans across the country, and here's the thing, it's still not number 1. There is something on this list that concentrates all of these problems even more tightly into a single bag. Number 1. Takis Fuego. If you've been tracking the pattern through this entire list, watching the problems accumulate one product at a time, Takis Fuego is what happens when nearly all of them show up in the same bag at once. Read the panel slowly. Corn flour, vegetable oil which may be palm, soybean or canola, salt, maltodextrin, citric acid, sugar, monosodium glutamate, hydrolyzed soy protein, onion powder, yeast extract, red 40 lake, yellow 6 lake, natural and artificial flavors, sodium bicarbonate, chili pepper, sodium inosinate, sodium guanylate, and TBHQ. Let's actually count the glutamate system, because this is the standout. You've got MSG, you've got hydrolyzed soy protein, which releases free glutamates during processing, you've got yeast extract, another concentrated glutamate source, and then sodium inosinate and sodium guanylate, the two amplifiers that research shows can multiply umami perception many times over beyond MSG alone. That is a quadruple-stacked glutamate enhancement system in a single snack. Nothing else on this list comes close to that. On top of that, you've got TBHQ, the petroleum-derived preservative Japan has banned, plus the aluminum-bound lake dyes that would require mandatory warning labels across the EU. And notice that vegetable oil listing doesn't even commit to one oil. The formula is free to shift between palm, soybean, and canola, without a single change to what's printed on the bag. The sodium runs extremely high per ounce, and a standard bag can hand you a large share of your entire daily sodium in one sitting. Former FDA Commissioner David Kessler uses the term hyperpalatable to describe products engineered exactly this way. Combinations of sugar, fat, salt, and flavor enhancers calibrated to overwhelm the brain's reward system. His point, backed by research, is that the difficulty of stopping isn't a personal weakness, it's the designed outcome. Highest flavor enhancement architecture on this list: a banned preservative, petroleum-derived dyes, an oil declaration that won't even name a specific oil, and marketing aimed squarely at kids and teenagers through bright packaging and social campaigns. That's why it takes the number 1 spot. Now that you know what to walk past, here at the Hidden Receipt we want to leave you with something to actually reach for instead. 4 brands that genuinely held up when we read the fine print. Let me be clear about what these are and aren't. These are not miracle health foods. They're still fried starches with calories and fat, and I want to be honest about that up front. But each one made the deliberate decision to leave out the synthetic dyes, the layered glutamate systems, and the petroleum-derived preservatives. Over years of regular eating, not a single bag, that's a genuinely meaningful difference. Best option number 4, Siete grain-free tortilla chips. Siete's sea salt variety is built on a short readable list: cassava flour, avocado oil, coconut flour, chia, and sea salt. Grain-free, non-GMO, and widely available in mainstream grocery now, from big chains to online. The sodium runs meaningfully lower than everything on the worst list. There's one honest asterisk worth flagging. Siete was acquired by PepsiCo in a deal that closed recently, and while the recipe hasn't changed so far, the acquisition pattern across the industry is well documented. Big parent buys clean brand, and reformulations sometimes follow down the line. So if you buy Siete, do one simple thing: check the label every single time. 5 or 6 ingredients should stay 5 or 6 ingredients. If that number starts creeping upward, you'll know something changed. Right now the product is clean. Whether that holds is worth keeping an eye on. Best option number 3, Lesser Evil Paleo Puffs. Lesser Evil makes cassava-based puffs cooked in coconut oil, with organic and non-GMO certifications, gluten-free and grain-free. Sodium runs low compared to the worst list. What sets this one apart, beyond the ingredients, is the ownership structure. The company is privately held, with no major snack conglomerate in the background making cost and supply chain decisions that quietly nudge the formula toward cheaper inputs. I'll be straight with you though. The Puffs list runs longer than the absolute strictest clean label you could find, and includes things like organic flavor and yeast extract. If you want their tightest option, look toward their simpler products with fewer ingredients. Privately owned, no corporate parent hovering, and a genuinely cleaner profile than almost anything in the mainstream aisle. That independence is a real advantage. Best option number 2, Jackson's Sweet Potato Chips in Coconut Oil. Jackson's has one of the simplest ingredient lists in the entire snack category. Sweet potatoes, coconut oil, and sea salt. 3 ingredients, that's the whole thing. The sweet potato base also brings naturally occurring beta-carotene, vitamin A and potassium, none of which you'll find in any corn-based chip from the worst list. It's grain-free, gluten-free, and free of the most common allergens, and it's available across natural grocers and mainstream chains alike. One thing worth knowing before you buy: Jackson's has been transitioning some products between coconut oil and avocado oil, so read which oil is in the bag you're holding. The coconut oil varieties are the safest, most consistent choice right now. But 3 ingredients is 3 ingredients, and that's an enormous step down from a 30-ingredient panel. When you can pronounce everything on the back and it fits on one short line, you're in a completely different category of food. Best option number 1, Masa Chips. Masa sets a standard almost no other branded tortilla chip currently meets. The complete ingredient list reads: organic corn, 100% grass-fed beef tallow, and sea salt. That's it. The sodium is among the lowest of any branded tortilla chip on the market. The corn is organic certified, which under those rules means it can't be genetically modified. And the fat source is beef tallow, a traditional cooking fat that's roughly half saturated and largely monounsaturated with almost no polyunsaturated content, essentially the opposite fat profile of the industrial seed oil blends running through every mainstream chip on the worst list. Masa is pricier and sold more directly, often 3 times the cost of a mainstream bag, and the shelf life is short because nothing inside is doing the chemical job of a preservative. Think hard about what that actually means. When a bag of Doritos sits on a shelf for 6 months without visibly changing, something inside is working as a chemical stabilizer. Masa's short shelf life isn't a drawback. It's proof that the ingredients are exactly what the label says they are, and nothing more. Is it expensive? Yes. But here's the honest comparison. When you buy a cheap bag of the worst list chips, you're paying for 30 ingredients, most of which exist to extend shelf life, amplify repeat consumption, and produce color through petroleum-derived dyes. You're funding a system built on the cheapest possible inputs, engineered into addictiveness through chemistry. Masa proves a tortilla chip can be 3 ingredients, taste like actual food, and carry no warning requirement in any country on Earth. That's what food is supposed to be. Here's what this whole investigation really shows. 10 products, the majority from a single company holding around 60% of the American salty snack market. The very same companies making these products have already reformulated cleaner versions for European shelves. Doritos in the EU uses beet juice and paprika for color. Cleaner formulas exist, they're already in production, they're already on shelves, just not the shelves near you. Americans are receiving the more chemically complex product, not because a cleaner version is impossible, but because nobody here has required it. So before your next grocery run, remember one thing from the hidden receipt. Flip the bag over. If the ingredient list runs past 5 or 6 items, or if you spot TBHQ, BHT, red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, mono and diglycerides, or a vegetable oil that never names a specific oil, you now know exactly what you're looking at, and exactly what it's doing there. Products made from real food don't need 30 ingredients to taste like food. Most people just never read that far down the label. If this changed what you'll reach for next time you're standing in that aisle, do one small thing. Share it with one person in your life who's still buying the same bag they've grabbed 1,000 times and never once flipped over to read. That single conversation might be the thing that finally makes them look. And once you start reading the back of the bag, I promise you, you can't stop.